Well, here it is, Lacey, the second generation Honda Insight.
Second generation. Zach, I really don't remember the first generation.
Well, you'd be excused for that, and people at home would be as well, because it didn't ignite the same kind of passion that the Prius did when both vehicles were introduced in the late 90s. The original Insight was a futuristic two-door hatchback that looked very similar to General Motors' EV1 pure electric car. Neither were particularly practical cars, rather a study in efficient aerodynamic design.
So, let's have a look at this new Insight, and most importantly, let's take it for a test drive and see what kind of mileage we can get.
All right, the most important thing for many people about this car is it's the cheapest hybrid model sold in Canada. $23,900 for the LX model, and the higher end version, the EX, the one we have here, is $27,500. Now the thing is, pricing for the all-new 2010 Prius has not been announced yet, but the current model starts at a higher price than this top-end model.
But what about the styling? Is it just me, or does the Insight look like a Prius? Car makers have come to learn that people who buy hybrids want a bit of credit for doing a good deed, so the car they buy should look like a hybrid. But does that mean that all hybrids in the future have to look like a Prius? I hope not. The side, the silhouette, and especially the back end look very similar to the Prius, but the Honda Insight is a bit smaller. Back here, the rear window is split, so the driver actually sees through the tailgate. The cargo area is very useful, and the back seats fold down flat. By the way, the battery is underneath the car, and the fuel tank's underneath the back seat.
Now the inside of this Insight is kind of a combination of the Honda Civic and the Honda Fit. The center dash looks more like the Honda Civic, and the side here looks more like the Honda Fit. One thing I have to complain about is the navigation and radio on the higher end EX models is actually closer to the passenger than it is to the driver, and it's a bit annoying. The seats are quite comfortable, even though the interior is a bit basic. Now if you get the higher end model, you get the armrest. Unfortunately, it doesn't adjust very much. Now since we're on the subject of seats, the back seat, we should point out, does not have as much room as the Toyota Prius.
Just like the Honda Civic Hybrid, the Insight has a motor assist system that's actually cheaper to make than the full hybrid system that's in the Prius. What's at work here is a small 1.3-liter gasoline engine matched to an electric motor for a combined output of 98 horsepower and 123 pound-feet of torque. When the accelerator is pressed, the gasoline engine starts and the electric motor provides additional power. When the electric motor is doing the driving on flat roads at consistent speeds, the gasoline engine continues to turn. The advantage to having both drive systems working at the same time is there is no noticeable change from driving a regular car equipped with a continuously variable transmission. There's none of the distracting switching back and forth between gas and electric that you find in other hybrid systems. The only time the hybrid shows its hand is when the car comes to a full stop and the gasoline engine shuts down. Now, I did find this system a little annoying because when you do actually start to accelerate, there's a little bit of a delay before the gasoline engine clicks in again. And I have a feeling it'd be really frustrating if you're doing a lot of driving in stop-and-go traffic. That being said, the interior is incredibly quiet. You don't notice the engine noise at all until you really put your foot down.
Much of the advantage that somebody gets from driving a hybrid is actually the way they drive the car. And this Insight has some very effective tools to help coach the driver along to be as efficient as possible. When the Eco button is pressed on the dash, the Insight changes the parameters of the hybrid system to achieve the best results. But the most unique feature is the interaction with the driver. When the driver is being the most efficient, the speedometer changes from blue to green, of course green being better. Also, the information display will reward the driver with leaves and flowers showing a job well done. The ultimate is 4 leaves and a flower on top. You know what, and it all works. It all comes together because it's kind of subconscious. When you're driving along, you're always looking at the speedometer, and you look down and you see, oh boy, it's blue. I want to change it to green, so you lift off the throttle a little bit. And then you start competing with yourself. You get into that competitive nature. You start looking at how many leaves you've been able to accomplish, and then you start checking the mileage. Look, I'm getting better and better. So it all works together to make you a different driver. What I'm pleasantly surprised about is just how drivable this car is. At low speeds, there is plenty of torque to get the vehicle moving. The steering isn't light. In fact, the whole car has a much sportier edge than the Prius. This feels like a fun-to-drive hybrid. Fun and hybrid? I thought those two worlds would never collide. So the other day I woke up and I thought, what am I going to do with this Insight? So I decided I'm going to Whistler. So I left Vancouver and I drove all the way to Whistler and all the way back. I did over 260 kilometers, and that included a stop at Costco in the city. And that's a very mountainous road. If you haven't been on the road to Whistler, the new road to Whistler where the Olympics will be, it's lots of elevation change. It's a true mountain road. So on the way there and back, this car was working. It wasn't just coasting along, and I averaged 4.4 liters per 100 kilometers on that trip. That's 64 miles per gallon. By the way, the posted fuel consumption for this car is 4.8, so I beat it on a serious mountain road. That is mightily impressive. I was absolutely astounded.
So Zach, our mileage for the Honda Insight, including your trip to Whistler and with 4 different drivers, was 5.5 liters per 100 kilometers, or about 51 miles per gallon. That's pretty remarkable. So what do you think of the Insight?
Well, first of all, I think the starting price is amazing at $23,900. Probably more people will opt for the higher end one, but that's still cheaper than the current Prius, so that's an advantage. Also, the design of this, now you get a 4-door hatchback with the much more usable rear cargo area, and it's very functional on the inside. Now, what I really liked about this vehicle is I was actually able to achieve the posted mileage. I was even able to beat it on my trip to Whistler at 4.4 liters per 100 kilometers. Now, when you factor in 4 different people over 2 weeks getting 5.5, it's still very close to the actual mileage. Now, Lacey, you know when I review cars on driving television, I always put the drive of the car front and center, and with this car, it's something I actually like about it. It handles very well for a hybrid. It feels okay and spirited enough for the city, and it's a better driving car than some of the other pure hybrids because you're always going back and forth from electric to gasoline. When you drive this, it just drives like a regular car with a continuously variable transmission. On the downside, the placement of the navigation screen there in the radio, it's way too far away, just a bad design in my opinion. And the other thing is, it's no knock against this car, but I can't see anybody buying the Civic Hybrid now that this thing's available. What do you like about it?
Well, you know what, Zach? It's a huge improvement in styling over the last generation. The inside's very comfortable, and the interior is incredibly quiet, especially on the highway. And the interior space is very usable with the hatchback design and the fact that the seats fold flat. You've got lots of room to put cargo in. And that mileage game, or the interaction that you have with the driver from the blue to the green and the 4 leaves and 1 flower, I know it's a little cheesy, but it's kind of fun and it works. And on the downside, I'm not too crazy about the interior. The dash is just a little too much on one side, a little bit too funky looking with the digital dash and all the information and colors and whatnot. And I really don't like the rear split hatch. Honestly, I find it really distracting when I'm driving.
You know, the one thing about this vehicle is I got to tell you, I like driving it. And most hybrids, I'm not a fan of the way they actually physically feel when you drive it. This one, I enjoyed. That's a first for me.
But what about the styling?
Well, I think they just stuck a picture of the Prius on the design studio wall and copied that. Not very inspiring. This one will totally outsell the Civic, which is a regular car. It looks like a regular car. People who buy these cars want the credit for driving a hybrid because they're special.
Like you.
For complete specs, go to our website at drivingtelevision.com.